Everybody likes a good deadline, but how about meeting 7,000 of them and never messing up? Our next guest certainly knows how to write, but also how to parlay that into a successful career. Matt Robinson, welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you, Greg. Great to be here.
How have you written 7,000 articles and not missed a deadline?
Yeah, I'm a freelancer. I'm always on the hustle, and having been an editor and publisher too, I know what it's like to have a writer pull up short, and so I just whatever it takes.
The focus of this episode is if I had known then what I know now, and then of course the corollary to that is parlaying it into networking. Have you always been like this with several irons in the fire, or is it something that you've come into positively over, say, the past 5 or 10 years?
I think the one thing I would have done is make more of a plan. A lot of it has been kind of just cold calling and kind of fumbling from way to way, which has made it a little more challenging. But I think on the other side of that is it's honed my relationship skills, it's honed my outreach skills, my kind of boldness in doing what it takes to get the jobs done and to make the connections. So it hasn't been so structured, but as a freelancer, that might be a good thing.
And how have you parlayed your writing success into networking? There's the obvious, which is you interview somebody for a story and they say, I need something else. But knowing you as I do, there certainly seems to be a secret sauce. What's your secret sauce?
Well, my secret sauce, for the first few years, I was writing about music. I was in the Boston Globe and Billboard magazine. Then it really just diversified. I have a wide range of interests, and people started calling me for different things. Like I said, now I'm doing a lot of food, and I wrote for the State Teachers Union for a number of years. So it's basically just I know a very wide range of people. So a lot of people call me and say, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that. I go to my database, I find the list, I send it out to them. And, and then even though it's sort of giving away what I have, my stock in trade in a way, it again strengthens the relationships and, makes people appreciate what I can do. And then a lot of times they'll pass me on to other colleagues in need of my base services, which are the writing and communication stuff. So it's really just kind of taking those risks, reaching out, putting your head on the block 1,000 times a day, and then just finding the people who get me and who are straight shooters like I try to be. And those have been the relationships that have sustained me.
I've always had a soft spot for freelancers or contractors. I tell folks all the time it's the difference between a W-2 and a 1099 job, and yours is clearly a 1099 and that you eat what you kill. If you had to go through it all again and you turn the clock back 20 years, would you still want to be a freelancer?
I'm not sure. When people say, oh, my son or daughter wants to go into writing, what do you recommend? I usually say do something else and have it as a hobby. Most of my friends and peers have the one job, the gold watch path, as it were. I know the gig economy is becoming much more popular now. So maybe I was a pioneer in that. But, it is kind of hectic. I have 10-year-old twins at home, and basically I pick them up at school. I'm running all over creation to get them to their activities, put them in bed at 9, and then I go back up to my office for another 3 or 4 hours. And the issue is it never can stop. There's always another pitch. There's always another story. There's always another, proposal, idea to put together. I had my book on the Ivy League that came out a few years ago. I now have 6 other book ideas. I'm trying to figure out which one to focus on. Do I need an agent? And, it takes a lot of scheduling, but of course, then the phone rings and you're off on something else.
Matt, if you were having a discussion with your 22-year-old self right now, what would be 1 or 2 takeaways you'd want to tell him?
Well, maybe that law school would have been the better option. I think just really, having more of a plan. I was already doing 1,000,001 things back then. I was teaching, I was tutoring, I was writing, I was still coaching boxing. I was a big brother, which was all enriching and, made my life exciting and fun. But I think part of me, especially when the writing is not going so well, I really wonder what might have been if if my father had said, I want you to go to law school and now's stop this silly writing and go, which is what I was expecting him to do. So that was a profound conversation. But so I wonder what might have been if I would have, feel that I fit in a little more, or if I'd be kind of feel bored and constrained, which I think that's what kind of gets me back out of that is when I've had full-time jobs, that's when I'm chomping at the bit more than anything.
Now, if you were having that same discussion with your 22-year-old professional self, did you ever embark on a career idea or take a job and think this is going to be great, and it ended up being a train wreck, or the opposite?
Yeah, I mean, there was one magazine I was actually teaching, and this magazine offered me what I thought was the golden ticket, an editor-in-chief position, and I went. And the publisher would never sign my contract, and I was suspicious, but we were already in the throes of it, so I kept going. It turned out that he was just kind of using me as a placeholder while a friend of his was on a 3-month business trip. So, things like that, I mean, they happen, that's, again, why I try to be a straight shooter, because a lot of the people I've met haven't. I guess, there have been a lot of big projects like the books that have, kind of withered on the vine. Unfortunately, the main reason why I wrote the book I did about the Ivy League is my father, who had gone to Brown, was diagnosed with dementia, and I figured I gotta, it was kind of a legacy piece for him. It was fun to write, but there was sort of that bittersweet side to it.
If you had one piece of advice for someone who you could educate in terms of what you wish you had known then and you know now, or in terms of becoming a master networker, or both, what would it be?
I mean, it's really just kind of get out there and be bold, take those risks, nothing ventured. There have been times where I'm at an event and just am really not in the mood to talk to people. And others where, I found that a good trick is to have a notebook and a pen. People seem to come to you and want to know what you're writing about. Like when I used to do cost of reviews, that was a great opener. But just, really look broadly, get out of your lane every so often, because I really find that the things kind of pollinate each other, and like I said, the people I've met have really been the great benefit of all the work and the hustle.
Matt, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Greg.
Matt Robinson, the author successfully of over 7,000 articles without ever missing a deadline, and at least one book in the can, and several other ideas following closely thereafter.
Are you a problem solver? Do you see the big picture and the small details? Want to turn big data into big decisions? Take AI to the boardroom. Translate rocket science into the science of business? Build your career at digital speed with a Master of Science in Business Analytics. Be ready for careers like analytics consultant, data science, analytics strategist, data translator, BI analyst, technical business analyst. 10 months and you're in business analytics.
Our next guest receives an A for effort. She's been a realtor, a community advocate, and a writer her entire life, and none of this is with a pecuniary benefit. She's doing it to build community. Hence our episode on networking. Wendy Bornstein, welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
It's nice to have you here. So what came first? Community activism, your desire to write, or desire to make money, or D, none of the above?
I actually started out, even before the real estate, I was in finance, but I think the main driver has always been community, connecting with people and just helping people. I love helping people.
You describe yourself as being in the service industry, but that's not something that I think most people would associate with being a successful writer.
Okay, so I was thinking about TripAdvisor, which was listed on my website as one of the things I enjoy writing for. And fast forward to 2012, we went to Cuba with my family, and I wrote a review of a restaurant that we went to, and it was just when they were starting to allow missions to go to Cuba to visit, and I got 200,000 reviews, so somewhere around 200,000 people loved my review. So it just made me feel really good that I'm writing things that are helping people.
The focus of our episode is on teaching other people how to improve their own networking skills. For someone who is interested in becoming a writer, either full-time or part-time, what would your number one piece of advice be for them?
To meet and talk to as many people as you can. And I find even when I go in an Uber, I talk to people and ask them what makes them click. Like, why did they become an Uber driver? What else did they do? And I think if you just start to show interest in other people and ask questions and give them the chance to answer you, it makes them feel very positive and it creates conversation.
But it's interesting that your number one piece of advice wouldn't be to find a mentor, go to a writing school, or offer a retreat, but rather to meet as many people and talk to them as possible.
I'm taking writing classes, but I think that all of us know how to write. You learn how to write when you're in first grade, and you can take writing classes and use Grammarly to improve your skills. But I think the other advice is just to write as much as you can. I ended up proofreading. My husband's a physician. I ended up proofreading a lot of his letters and things that he had to write to client, patients, or whatever. Not patients, but articles he had to write because he used to publish a lot of articles. And I just find the more exposure you have to writing and practicing writing, the better your skills have. So I use Grammarly, which I think is great. And I'll write an article and then I'll just look at their corrections and, I find my own skills have been improved just using the basic tools that I have on my laptop.
And how about advice for someone who wants to improve their networking skills?
So I've been taking some networking classes with Andy Winnig, who runs elevator pitch workshops. And he taught just how to do like a 90-minute introduction, a 30-second to a 90-second introduction to get the conversation going. And I think if you can take advantage, there's a lot of those on alignment and a lot of those just people have networking webinars every day, basically. So, if you can just try to take advantage of trying to meet people and try to find other people that want to meet other people, especially if they're business people, it's always good to find some type of a networking group. Like I also joined the Chamber of Commerce so I could meet people in my community and just practice my elevator pitches skills with them and practice with anybody I meet.
When you give your elevator pitch, are you simply trying to be affable and get people to like you, or is there a hook, a certain part of the story that's supposed to raise eyebrows?
Okay. So when I was a realtor, and the president, Saul Cohen, used to say, don't be a secret agent. You want people to know that you're a realtor. Because at first I was kind of nervous about telling my friends because I felt like everybody would think I was trying to sell something to them. But then I started then I just started thinking, if people know visibly what I'm doing, then everybody knows, everybody has a need for real estate, no matter what. People always come up to me now. So I started becoming a little bit more open about it by wearing a Coldwell Banker vest or sitting at Starbucks with my laptop in my real estate folder instead of sitting in my office so people would know that I was Wendy, the realtor at Starbucks. And then people just started coming up to me, or I would just meet people and I may just say something like, oh yeah, I'm doing this appraisal for somebody. And kind of just show people what I'm doing, but not show that I'm trying to find them as a client, but just kind of spark interest about a conversation.
Wendy, talk to us about the art of communication. Is it simply difficult for some people to effectively communicate with others?
You know what? I think it is becoming harder and harder. And one of the things I've noticed, even with my kids, is that they text each other instead of picking up the phone and saying, hey, do you want to go out for coffee? It could take 20 minutes to get to the point. So I try the best I can to instead call people and just have a in-person conversation.
Wendy, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wendy Bornstein, community activist, author, and realtor, talking about best skills in networking.